Welcome back. It is Bones. And in this one, let's take a look at some custom work that I have done. Now, this is definitely a work in progress. I've been working on and off on this for months, and this is going to be my redone, customized steel. Now, we all know this figure. Now, a lot of people were let down by this release by McFarlane. I still think that he's going to take one more shot at it. A lot of people didn't really like this figure, although it did sell rather well because it is a steel figure, and that's a figure that we rarely see. But there were definitely some choices that were made by McFarlane that a lot of people didn't enjoy. Now, I have been, brewing on this one for a long time. I wanted to do certain things, and it took me a while to get around to it. And if you've been following me for a while, you know that sometimes just out of the blue, I start working on a custom and I'll get the itch and I won't stop until I finish it because I did have a lot of the parts that I needed. I think the only thing I really was looking for was a cape, and once I did acquire that final piece, I went ahead and finished up the rest of the custom work that I wanted to do. Now, this one was a little bit difficult, not too bad. Some things I wasn't too satisfied with, but I know that in the future I can eventually, fix it a little bit more and get it more to my liking. As always, these are works in progress because I could decide to change up certain things that I've done. But for the most part, I am happy with this one. And it really makes the figure a lot more posable and a lot more fun in hand, and dare I say, even a lot better looking. So, this is my custom steel. We'll go through it and I'll tell you guys the whole backstory and how this came about. Now, first off, the main thing that started this was that I really wanted to do a steel the way that the signature sculpt Mattel superheroes steel was made. Loved this figure for a long time. In fact, it is still a pretty good figure aside the limited articulation and the smaller scale, but besides that, he still cuts a pretty good presence on the shelf. So that's a figure that, not to be taken lightly. It is a great steel figure, everything you would want, and it has its own style. And I kind of wanted to emulate that with this McFarlane version. Now, I did end up buying four of these because I bought three of the standard release, one to keep in box, one to keep in its original release form, one to customize, and of course, I did pick up the Platinum edition. Now, the Platinum was one of those Platinums that, that is readily available. Like a lot of people didn't really, it wasn't a sought after Platinum. And I never felt the urge to open it up. So I'll just keep that one in package for prosperity. But I always had on the back burner the fact that I wanted to do a custom steel, more in the image of this DC Superhero Select Sculpt version. Now, of course, the main thing about this is that chest emblem, that shield. Steel has usually a pretty large shield on the front chest. The alternate version of this one is in a real chrome, almost vac metal silver plastic. And this is just the standard version, but it's still a really nice steel figure. And of course, the McFarlane one had that weird shaped S symbol. Now, if you go into the comics, there is tons of different varieties of steel. You can find all kinds of different ways that they drew steel and had them in the comics in different versions. You even find one where the S is chopped up like the McFarlane version. So it's not like they didn't do something that was in the comics. It's just not a style that a lot of people like. So that was my first obstacle that kind of held me back, was that I really couldn't find an S shield that I wanted to use. I wanted a real standard diamond cut one, and I just couldn't find anything large enough to fit. But eventually I decided on, I think I got this from a black suited animated Superman, heated it up, stretched it out, and then took off the original S shield from the steel figure and then replaced it with this animated S. Now, for a while, I had it the way it was, like silver with a black inside the S. And for a long time, I was gonna leave it like that, but I knew that the real steel version that I enjoy has like rivets around the S. Now, that was another thing that kind of, messed me up a little bit. And that was that I didn't figure out how to make the rivets or decide a method of doing it until I was halfway done with putting the rivets on. So I kind of messed up because once I started it, and once I got it down pat where I could get each little rivet the same size, I was already pretty much done with the S shield. Now, it doesn't necessarily take anything away if you just, look at it. It doesn't look really bad. Plus, it's, steel. It has kind of hammered or textured steel work to it where it could have little cracks and crevices. So I'm not too bummed out about that. I think the main thing was that it wasn't large enough to what I wanted to cover the whole chest. But in the end, it kind of worked out because it gave me the upper part of the old shield. And I ended up using that part of the old shield to make some portholes where I could apply the cape so that it would be applied here above the collarbone. Now, once again, you got to understand all this stuff took time. I did little pieces, piece by piece. It wasn't all done like overnight. So that's why this did take me a while. But I did want to at least show it to you guys because I was pretty happy with the results. Now, another thing I wanted to do was darken up the paint of the arms and the face and the legs, which in this Mattel version is really dark. So I may eventually even go this dark to add to this custom, but I'm not sure yet. What I ended up doing was going with like a darker gray gun metal, which if you put it next to the original release, you can really tell the difference in the tones of paint. I silvered up the gauntlets, the boots, the trunks, the shoulder pauldrons. All of these got a kind of chrome silver paint, as well as a lot of little chrome details, even on the head sculpt. I silvered in the ear pods and each little rivet on his head. So all that was a lot of tedious work. And I may not even be done. I may eventually repaint him a little bit more. But for the most part, the base is done for this custom steel. Now, another thing I wanted to replicate was these tubes that were on the Mattel version. Now, you can find this in the comics. It's not on each version of Steel, but the more iconic 90s versions do have these tubes connected from the belt down into the boots. Now, surprisingly, it was there. Like the parts were there on the steel figure. I just had to figure out a way to connect the tubes. Now, what I ended up doing, these tubes are from the Spawn Soul. What is it? Soul Taker, Soul Catcher? I'm not sure. But since I have used that figure for so many customs, I have like 3 or 4 heads laying around. So this is the part of the gas mask that comes out from the front and goes onto like an apparatus on his belt. So I cut that, modified it to where it would go right into the top of the boots, up into the belt. Now I can remove these still. You can see here I have it to where they are detachable still. I never glued them in. And they don't fall out. You can manipulate them and articulate them and they'll stay in there. There's no problem with that. So in the end, that was a detail that I really wanted to add, and I finally figured out how to do it, and I'm pretty happy with that. Now, another thing I did was add some articulation. If you look at the head, he looks down pretty far, looks up a lot more than the standard release version. You got right to left, and of course, you could tilt the head for some attitude, as well as I did some modding on the waist, where now he has a lot more side movement at the waist and a very nice crunch. Now, it's not as much as I would like. I would like a little bit more, but it has enough to where you can pose him and get him in some pretty dynamic poses. So doing the mods on the waist added me a lot more articulation and range and makes them a lot more fun to pose and do photography. Now, of course, the last part I was waiting for, once I did all the paint, touched up every little detail that I wanted to start adding some other things. Like, he did not come with any fists, and I did make him two fists. So that was another cool addition that adds to the fun in displaying him and posing him. When you have those fists, it just adds a whole nother level. And finally, I wanted to add the cape, and eventually, I ended up using the cape from the Task Force Superman. Now, this kind of all worked out on its own and allowed me to finish one custom and do another one. So it kind of worked itself out. I didn't really plan it. But what I ended up doing was I used the head from that Task Force Superman for my custom regeneration suit Superman. So that's a permanent head sculpt that I'm going to use on that body, on that custom. Then I ended up taking that Superman body, removing all of the digital cell shading that they added for that wave, and making a Superman. I'm not going to show it to you completely because I'm going to do a video on that one as well. And I'm not exactly positive of what shield I want to use for that one, so I'm going to hold off on that one. But I did use the cape from the gold label Superman on that new kind of best Superman ever that I'm going to end up making. And in the end, what that allowed me to do was to finally use that nice red wired cape from the Task Force Superman and apply it to this steel. Now, I really like this one because it doesn't have a yellow S. It has the three wires on the sides and on the bottom, which really gives you the chance to manipulate it and put him in a lot of poses. Now, I cannot tell you how much more fun he is to have the added articulation, the wired cape, the fists, all of that really makes this a great custom steel figure. Now, of course, we do have to talk about the hammer as well, because if you know the original release, that hammer is pretty wonky. It's always out of shape. I don't know what happened, but that's one of the worst, like, rods or staffs that they ever made for a weapon from McFarlane. But just to keep it as it is, I keep it like that on the original release. But if you see, I customized this one. I used a staff from one of the Tim Drake Robin, added some little details. I even made it to where it like could stretch out a little bit longer if you want to add some length to it. Added some chrome little touches, and it works perfectly with this steel custom. So in the end, all of that culminated into now I have my steel custom. Tons of fun, great figure. Love the added articulation, love the customized hammer. And of course, I can always keep the standard release to show what McFarlane gave us and what I ended up customizing on my own. Now, we do know that there's going to be a lot more Death of Superman figures coming out. They're going to do another Superboy. They're going to do Cyborg Superman. And they're going to take another swing at the Eradicator Superman. So, really looking forward to all that. There may be another shot at Steel in that upcoming lineup. But if there's not, I will have my Steel custom to show and display with those new figures. But anyways, guys, fun little custom. Hopefully, I gave you guys some ideas of what you can do and what is possible when you put in a little bit of work. But anyways, you guys keep hunting out there, keep collecting, keep customizing, and I will see you on the next one.
They used to call me Crazy Joe, but now they can call me Batman.